what's up? Welcome back to the CEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. I have the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Danny Johnson today. He's been an entrepreneur and a veteran house flipper since 2003. He's also been in different verticals, in terms of software development and things of that sort. So we're going to be tapping into a lot of different little aspects of what it really takes to be an entrepreneur, to be a successful entrepreneur, launch different businesses in different verticals, and really break into the topic of how to build a team. All right. Who do you have to be as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a visionary, in order to, develop a team that's successful, and it's going to give you back that freedom that we're always looking for as business owners. So Danny, welcome to the show. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Hey, Rafael. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I have to say, I am a little bit nervous because this is usually like when I interviewed for a podcast, it's usually all about strictly like real estate, doing deals, and all that kind of stuff. So digging into this stuff will be fun, but it's definitely a little bit different for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll just pull on some threads and then have really cool conversations. I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to like every podcast has niche followers, right? Niche people that listen to it. But at the end of the day, I think it always comes down to value. And if we, put that foot forward, just everything just kind of falls into place, which I know you have a lot of. I mean, we were just before we jumped on this, we were talking about, things in the lead generation space, all the back end work that you have done in order to get to to a successful state, also in putting teams together and everything. So I want to tackle all of that. Before we jump into it, though, can you just tell us a little bit about you and how you got started?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I went to school to become a software developer, and that was around 2000, which was like the big .com boom. Internet was exploding. For a lot of people listening, they probably don't even know what it was ever like to not have internet. But, so that was all happening, very exciting. So I was a software developer. I went to work for a defense contractor, and I was doing development, but it wasn't very exciting. It wasn't really challenging. And my father started flipping houses about that time. And so I saw all the excitement he was having, telling me about all the deals he was doing, driving around town. And for some reason, just the thought of not being in an office and being able to drive around town during the day was like when you're a kid and you're sick from school and you're watching daytime TV, cartoons while your classmates are in class and you're thinking about what class they're in, and that you're having a good time sitting on the couch. So anyway, it was like that sort of feeling. I was like, I want to do that too. So I started doing that and did it lunch breaks, evenings, weekends for almost 3 years, doing that business part-time, flipping houses. And I was losing money because I was still at my job, but I couldn't get rid of that steady paycheck. I needed that to feel safe and comfortable. And thankfully, this is like one of those times, it's weird to say, but I got fired, I got let go, and I was grateful. And, my manager was saying that he was going to fight for me and it wasn't right. He was going to fight for me. All this kind of stuff. I told him, don't. I appreciate
No, you're good, bro.
I need this, man. You don't understand because I haven't talked about it, but I'm doing real estate. So anyway, so that launched, real estate full-time. And it was interesting because going from part-time to full-time, I had learned like all of the most important, the 80-20, right? The 20% of things that produce 80% of results, because I only had that limited time working a full-time job. And so when I went full-time, I didn't know what to do with myself. I started wasting time and just like not doing the right things, but figured all that out. And, for probably 8 or 9 years, my wife at the time and myself did everything in the business. The business was
8 or 9 years. You were doing it, pretty much running a solo operation.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I would do all the marketing. I would take all the calls. I'd go to the appointments. I'd put them on contract. I'd follow up with closing stuff, manage the rehab, all that. And it was, oh man, that was exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. It's totally different, right? When you come in from a corporate standpoint or even not necessarily, corporate, but, working at a business, at a standalone business with, mom and pop shops, even. I mean, when you jump into entrepreneurship and the big idea of betting on yourself and kind of switching everything, like all the, switching the pendulum from somebody's paycheck to your own paycheck and you creating that, that next thing that's going to come through the door, it can be daunting. It can be daunting, and it takes a lot of work just to kind of, put the pieces in place. I can imagine, man, running, especially in real estate where you have everything's so volatile. You have so many moving parts. It's taxing.
Yeah, we experienced that, right, with the crash in 2008. It was like, oh crap, like, and having my mentor and other people I looked up to say there's no shame in taking a job during all this. And I was like, I'm not employable anymore. I cannot go work for somebody. I'm going to figure this out. And, we did, which was cool. We started creating notes on our financing properties and then selling the notes as soon as we closed. I mean, took a discount on the note, but we were still making almost the same amount that we were flipping. So that was really cool. Just seeing how to adjust with whatever came, right? Like adjusting with market shifts was fun.
Yeah, the pivot.
Yeah, pivot. And we had to, because there's a lot of people that didn't make it, and I'm in Texas too, so there's that. Like we didn't have a huge bubble of crazy, insane, appreciation that was happening in other places.
Oh yeah, Arizona and Florida were insane at that time.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy what was happening. So what did you do about it? I mean, you were running an operation. Then what was the catalyst that said, all right, cool, I need something else. I need help. I need to bring people in. I need to blow this thing out of the water, but do it right. Yeah,
the catalyst was just, like getting to the point where I would take a call from a motivated seller. And then I would get off the call and my wife would say, you were being kind of rude. And it was like I got to a point where I didn't want to take the calls and I was frustrated. It was coming across, and that just destroys like your business. It really does. I mean, it doesn't do any favors in trying to get a deal when you're working directly with motivated sellers. And so there was a point where I realized, because I had written a book called Flipping Houses Exposed. It was like 34 weeks of my business. I documented every single lead that came in. So during those 34 weeks, there was 495
leads.
Yeah, I was like, the whole business model was, we need more deals, so we need more marketing. We need more deals, we need more. So do more marketing. 495 leads. Looking back at that, whenever I was doing that, we were still running everything just ourselves, without a team or a true business. Really, it was more of like a hobby. Only did 11 deals.
Out of 495 leads, you ended up with 11 deals.
So it's like 1 out of every 40 something, almost 50 leads to make a deal. Right. When you're spending good money on per lead, like that's a ton of money. Right. And there's so much inefficiency there, but I had nothing to gauge it against. I didn't have anybody telling me how many leads they were. Right.
What wasn't? Yeah.
It just wasn't a common thing. And it varies so much from market and different people. But later I realized that was horrible, right? And I was tired and just like, why did I not make that shift? And I saw this guy, Justin, in California, Justin Williams, who became a really good friend. We actually, through a roundabout way, ended up meeting, and he wanted me to be on his podcast or something. And I talked to him, and as soon as I got off the phone, I said, this guy's got it figured out. He's only working like, the typical 4-hour kind of deal.
4-hour work. He's pulling a Tim Ferriss. What's up with that?
And even like was saying that he was Justin Tim Ferriss Williams, but he wasn't. But I'm just kidding. Say that. But after we got off the call, I said, man, I just was sitting there just kind of stunned. And the only thing that came to my mind was, I want to go out there and hang out with him. I want to go and shadow and see what his day is really like and how he did this.
Yep.
So I called him right back and I was like, hey, do you mind if I fly out there and hang out with you? And he's like, yeah, we can schedule it. And I was like, no, like tomorrow. He's like, yeah, sure, man. Like, I think it ended up being like 2 days later, but I flew out there and he picked me up from the airport. And, it was really an interesting situation because this gets into where it's all mindset, right? It's all beliefs that we have. Because when he picked me up from the airport, I'm so much in this mindset of I've got to do everything, because if I hire somebody, they're not going to do it right. And they're going to be a bunch of responsibility. It's going to be so much work managing people. I wasn't a very good employee. I'm not going to have very good employees. I would lose freedom by hiring people. I wouldn't be able to take a 3-month vacation and shut the business down and not have any worries. which was complete crap. Like that never happened. Like working the business ourselves, we could never stop it because we were juggling everything. If we stopped it.
Yeah, the idea of I kind of fell into that trap too a while back, but it's a complete fallacy, right? If you like, no, I'm going to do a solo operation, so I have more freedom. It just unfortunately it doesn't work that way, right? Because as you start getting more motion and just moving forward with whatever it is that you're doing, things start to pile up, and then you get tasky, and now you have a to-do list that's 100 things every single day, and you don't have time for the big picture thinking, which is going to give you those like big massive results. I used to run a transportation business, and at one point we had 48 employees on that, and that was the first business that I built. I had 48 employees, and about 97% of my headaches as a business owner came from the team, right? I just didn't have, there was a lot of things that were not in place that could have caught that. So my thinking was, you know what, people equal headaches. People in a business equal headaches. People in a business equals, problems. So I ended up selling the business, and then the next, 2-3 ventures that I really, tapped into, like, no, I'm going to figure out how to do it by myself. So I got better at systems, but you still get bottleneck. I looked at so many different ways of trying to, skin the cat on this. How can I just have a system though, so I can run it by myself and maybe one assistant or something? And it's not doable when you're trying to make a dent, when you're, especially in real estate and in our industry, which is so competitive. I mean, you have to be on top of it, right? It's either going to take your time or somebody else's, but there's definitely got to be somebody there to
absolutely
figure things out.
Yeah, I think the only way it's doable is if you're okay with maybe doing 5 to less than 10 deals a year, and you're good with that, right? Like but that's, I don't know. I think that's
that's fair.
The only way possible to do that. And it's doable for some people, but most of us want more. Like we just want to grow and not just like be stuck in this one cycle of thing. And that's what it really was. It's like we had success in doing like 10 to 15 deals a year. And it's like, well, we want to do more. And instead of breaking down those false beliefs and the beliefs about what it means to hire somebody, and responsibility and freedom being thrown away, we were just doing more of what worked for us. Like we've had success with this. All we need to do is do more of it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because you start dropping the ball, you get frustrated when people call and all that kind of stuff. So when Justin picked me up from the airport, we get in his truck, and I'll be honest, I was kind of judging him because like he had manual roll down windows in his truck, and he was just like, it was just really basic.
You were expecting to be picked up in a Lambo or something like that.
Yeah, well, not a Lambo, but I mean, just something a little bit more. This guy's he's doing a ton of deals and he's got all this stuff figured out. I just expected different things, and I think I respect him for how you could never tell that he was doing as well as he was. Like that I do respect now, but at the time, just being honest, like I was kind of judging. I didn't know what to expect, and I was kind of judging him on that. And so whenever he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's go check out some of your rehabs. And he goes, well, I don't even know where they're at. And even if I did, and we went there, the contractors wouldn't know who I was. And I started going, man, is this guy is he just trying to be a guru? And like, he's just playing this big game up, like he's learned it, but he's not really doing it. Like what?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense.
I'm wasting my time.
Yeah. How, and like I said, I was coming from this other mindset, right? Doing everything. It's like, how could you not be doing any of that? Not even know where your properties are, like being so, like, to me, that was like so reckless, so out of control, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I need to control everything. I got to make sure it's all lined up. And so I was just kind of like, I was doubting him. I was like, I don't know about this guy, man, but I got all day to talk and stuff. So we hung out. We ended up meeting his right-hand person. She was like running the show. And it's like, okay, here's what, she's the one that's just like me. Like she's doing all this stuff, but then she's got people that she's delegating. So, she's even at another level. And so he had the whole thing set up, and he was taking a couple calls and handling some deal situations. So I knew it was all legit. And it was mind blowing. It would just like change my whole perspective. It just really changed all of that. And over the years, after a couple of years, he actually created a mastermind. I became a part of that. And he made another level one, a higher level one. I joined that one and just grew through this whole thing. And we built a team. You know, we did those things. I let go after several slaps of, hey, get over yourself. You're not going to be the best at being an acquisitions person when you've got all these other responsibilities. Hire someone else to do it. And finally did. And we ended up having a team where we were doing, you know, like I said before, I was doing like 1 out of every 45, 50 during that time period of leads was a deal. We got to where we were doing like 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 7 became a deal with a team where I wasn't even having to go to appointments. I wasn't taking calls. I wasn't getting contracts. I was in a meeting for an hour each week. And that was it.
Yeah.
And so I got to build the software I was wanting to build for our team and for other, you know, investors that we ended up building. At that time, I had that time to start doing that.
Yeah, I think we run a similar model when it comes to the team. The crazy thing about it, it was like it also just landed heavily on me too, right? Wow, like these guys are way better at, you know, some stuff than me. Like I hate, for example, in our industry, I hate dispo. I don't like dispo. I like acquisitions. I like negotiations. I like to be out there with people and everything. But dispo, it just it drags. And I just don't like it. And so I sucked at it, right? And I wasn't doing, you know, well, there's so many different things that I could have been doing better than dispo, right? And when I plugged somebody into that space, like, wow, they just started crushing it, you know, killing it, you know, ramping up even the dispo amounts and getting more profits and finding money where they're, you know, I wasn't seeing it just because my mindset wasn't there. But I think it's one of the things that happens, right? We're wired to, we have anchoring biases. So we start a business and we have a bias of we're biased as to, okay, things got to be done this way. This is how I learned it. And this is how it's got to be processed. And that helps at the beginning, right? Because you're kind of sticking to your guns and getting things done. And then, you know, that pushes you to a certain point. But after a certain point, it really becomes an anchor. Like it's, you have to grow from that thought process, from that mindset in order to plug people in and just do more. I mean, be able to close, you know, 1 out of every 5 deals instead of 1 out of, you know, every 50. Why? Because you find talent and you're actually using that talent. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, the acquisitions person had time to sit there for 2 hours on the couch and talk and wasn't thinking, I've got to get the marketing out. I've got to do this. I got to do that. Kids from school, like all this kind of stuff going on.
One job, bro. One job.
Building rapport. They were just really listening to the seller. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, I think, like in that whole thing, it was professional. And, you know, we could set an appointment immediately because someone was ready to go. It wasn't, I got these other things I need to do, so I'm going to set my appointment for the next day or something. All those kind of decisions end up hurting. And I wish I could say that hiring was straightforward and easy and we hired people and they were a success on the team. But, you know, we learned. And so listening to a podcast like this, right, you hear somebody, I did it all myself and I brought on a team and it was all rainbows and sunshine, you know?
Yeah, about that.
But there's like a couple years span in there where it wasn't, where it was more, you know, like, I don't know, I'm going to keep my language clean here, but, you know, just like this.
You don't have to.
Right. So, I found out that just hiring somebody and saying, hey, follow me around, shadow me is not a good way of training somebody. And then hiring somebody and then figuring out what you're going to have them do is definitely not a good thing to do either.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that the hard way. And, you know, listening to this, you know, you might think, I wouldn't do that. I would know better than that. But the thing is, when you're running everything in the business and you hire somebody like that, you're at a different place because you're so busy and you're just like, I don't have time to sit here and think through. I'm just going to have them follow me as I do this stuff. You know, so it happens. So but anyway.
Well, one of the things that I've that have proven, like for me, to be the most profitable and the best, you know, use of my time is to actually get all that knowledge that's inside my head. We know how to do things a certain way, right? but being able to articulate that and then put it into a system, drop it into a software like Trainual, or, you know, if you have something else, you know, I don't know, break it down in a manner that it's coachable for your employees, right? That used to, I used to look at that kind of stuff as a time waster. Like, no, I don't have time to do a stupid video right now on how to fill out this contract. I don't have time to do a stupid video on how to, you know, negotiate this. Like, no, they can figure it out. They can, you know, look at YouTube. But it doesn't work that way, right? We have particular systems in place in every single one of the businesses, you know, of our businesses, you know, whether you know it or not, right? It's going to be a shitty system or it's going to be a decent system. That's up to you. But people are going to follow a path. Whenever you start plugging them, the last thing that you want to do, like you said, is plug somebody in and then have them not know what to do, like not know what their, you know, accountability is. You know, so setting things up like KPIs and just metrics. Yeah.
That's the next step, right? Because that was a piece, I think, the struggle of hiring and setting the right expectations and following through with that. I knew enough to write out, you know, this is the appointment agreement. These are what your responsibilities are. I knew that, but it wasn't something that we were going off of. I would create it, give it to them, and then it would just be shadow me or follow me, or you do this, you do that. And there wasn't any kind of cohesiveness. It was kind of like just checking it off the box. Yeah, I created the appointment agreement. Good. Tuck it away somewhere. Never look at it again until they want to raise. Or, you know, or an annual review comes up or whatever.
Right.
And it wasn't until I met another friend, Andy McFarland, who was in one of those groups, and he's in Utah. And I did the same thing with him. I was talking to him. I was like, this guy's got it. He's got it dialed in with team. He's in multiple markets. Like, he's doing good stuff. So I said, hey, let me come out there. Yeah. And he did. So I flew out there and hung out with him, went by his office and all that kind of stuff, and met with all his people. And the whole thing from that trip, though, that was great, right? But really, when I'm telling other people and they're like, well, it's okay for you because you got that experience and I don't have it, so how am I going to do it? But I'm telling you, really, everything that trip boiled down to was him giving me one book. Really, I mean, I learned a bunch of stuff from what talking to his people and seeing all that. Yeah. But really, everything from that trip came down to the one book that he gave to me.
Wow.
And that was you've probably heard this book, but Traction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Entrepreneur Operating System.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, man, I got several copies of that book, and that really changed things because it made us look at our 10-year plan or 3-year plan, break it down to 1 year, go into quarters, and then having a structure, the level 10 meeting structure that we could follow. And really in the software business that I'm running now, the software that we're doing for Forefront CRM is all based on that. Like that's how it's all operating. And so having those expectations, from what the role is and then expectations, but making the expectations about a KPI or a measurement, right? Your job is to have this number look good, right? And it's a number. It's not a story. It's tangible. Some kind of thing that could be fuzzy. It's a number, and that's how we're going to know whether you're doing a good job or not. It's just based on the number, right? And so when we have a weekly meeting, have you heard of 90?
90, the meeting book?
Yeah, 90.io is the software for Traction.
Oh, no, I haven't used that.
Yeah, check it out. It's 90.io, but it's basically by them,
90.
by the same company. And you can do your meetings through that software and track your KPIs and then, put stuff into issues and get down into where you're discussing the issues and all that stuff. So in that, we're able to look week over week at what our KPIs are. So we each of our teams has its own table of those. And then as a management team, we choose which ones are most important from those tables to look at in the meeting. So when we quickly look at the data, we see where it's red because it's below expectation, and we see where it's trending. And then we can say, hey, something's going on here. Let's put that in issues. When we get to issues, we'll discuss it. What's going on? Cool. Right. And so now everybody kind of knows, like, okay, this is how I'm being held accountable. This is also how I get praised, right? Because if they're kicking butt, that number looks awesome.
Right.
Right. And every
Green.
week we can say, dude, but otherwise there's no, even if they're doing well, if you're not looking at it or measuring, how are you going to be able to praise them for doing a good job? Right.
Right.
And so that gets really deflating. Somebody doing great work for you and then never getting recognized for it, unless it's like I got an awesome deal. Great. But all the other stuff you did, you should have been praised for too, because you've been kicking butt on whatever else you're being measured on.
Well, I think it also, creates consistency, right? It's not performing great, for a month out of the quarter. And then, you get one good deal and then you just kind of sit back on your laurels. Like, it's consistency every single week. We do something similar. I built a scorecard with a set of KPIs and navigators and stuff for each one of the positions that we have in the business. But we go off of the scorecard. We have I built a CRM as well that draws out the KPIs, and we just take those and then we just track them on a weekly basis. So it's funny that you say that you run a weekly meeting. We do our meetings 90 minutes every Tuesday, and then we have a second training session on Thursdays. So it's just two big points of contact with the whole team. Yeah. And just, spending the time for those two sets of 90 minutes keeps me in the loop, keeps accountability high, keeps everybody, well within their expectations, and they know what's coming, what they have to do and whatnot. And really, like, it just creates that bond of teamwork and consistency. It doesn't even take that much, man, as a business owner. Once you have a couple of things in place, that's what's so incredible.
Yeah, it is. And that's hitting the nail on the head, right? Because as you hire people, well, at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself, but I think this is true for a lot of people. You're like, I used to be able to do that job because I had to do all the jobs. So I could do that job in 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So like there's this concern that I'm paying somebody full time sometimes for like 2 hours of work, right?
I could do it. I don't need a VA.
But it's this weird thing, going on, because you're like, man, I'm worried because I got to help, I got to support. So, and so doing this kind of thing takes that away, because you can see how everything is doing, like however you want to measure it. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to see that all that stuff is happening. So you don't have to hover. You don't have to ask them. You don't have to have these weird mental conversations with yourself about like whether that person's doing all of their work and all that kind of stuff. Like, it just creates a better team with a lot more trust and a lot more, transparency. Like, everybody kind of knows what's going on, and it just, truly helps. And, that's one of the things that, like, Forefront CRM, I was also tired of entering all those numbers in every week for the house business. Mm-hmm. So with that, we already have all that information inside that CRM. So it populates and shows you all those KPIs. There's like 27 data points, I think, automatically in there. Wow. Now this is for real estate, right? For real estate investors and agents and stuff. But the cool thing, though, I like the most about it, and I wish that I could somehow do this in 90, but I don't think it would ever be possible, is that number is actually a link, right? And so whenever I'm saying 10 appointments, like what 10 were those, I can click on it and then see the 10 properties that make that number up.
Oh, that popped up. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I'm only seeing a number, sometimes I question the number, and I can't dig in. Like, it'd take a lot of work to figure out which ones those were, to dig in and find out what was going on. So, it's just like, it's so beautiful to just click and say, it's that property.
Go straight to that screen. It's actually one of the features that the Podio has. It's a tangent in conversation on the technical stuff, but Podio does have, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you can create tiles in there. It'll click, it'll take you straight to that screen. So it kind of becomes like this little filter that has a number in it. And it's easy to create a big fat dashboard of the important stuff. That's in there. But just having any way, right, to get to your data quick, to be able to break it down and then look at the patterns that are, what happened last month? Was it a big month, a low month? And then what did we do different from then to now? Especially if you have something like Forefront CRM where it actually populates all that stuff for you automatically. It's insane. Like, there's no reason why businesses nowadays shouldn't be running off of data points. At the end of the day, it's running a business by the numbers, right? That's what's tangible. That's what's going to allow automation and delegation to happen, right? And more importantly, to happen effectively.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and there's two sides of the data thing too, because I realized that looking at the KPIs week over week, you can spot trends. But especially in the real estate industry, right, where you have, you look at it like a deal funnel, and this probably fits for any kind of sales funnel really, but you have a lead, right? Whether it's a qualified lead or not, whether you set the appointment, whether you actually go to the appointment or it's canceled, whether an offer is made, whether the offer is accepted, whether the deal is closed, right? Like you've got these steps. And when you're looking at KPIs week over week, you can spot trends, but you cannot easily figure out what's happening with your marketing return. Because you could have 20 leads this week and only 2 appointments, but those 20 leads over the next 3 weeks could have produced 5 or 6 more appointments.
Right.
So you can't, there's no line of like seeing what went where. So I think that it's still the most valuable view in the company overview, 30,000 foot view of what your company is doing with the KPIs. But I think that you also have to have and we built this in, right? Because you had to have it. It was another view that's a funnel. And it's if you've ever used like Google Analytics where they had the funnel and it shows where people go out and stuff like that. It's a funnel, so you can choose whether you want all your campaigns or just one campaign or whatever it is, and then look at that funnel for that time period and see what happened with those leads that came in over time. Like, obviously you can't do it like 2 days because you're not going to have.
You don't have.
But you put enough time, and then you can really see, okay, this campaign was generating a ton of leads, right? But all the appointments were being canceled, or like no offers were being made because the people weren't motivated.
Ton of leads,
and then you find out, you're not only spending money on stuff that's not producing deals, but you're also putting a lot more work on you and your team by having to take those calls, by going on those appointments, and you dial it in. It's just.
I have a principle that less business, more profits, right? It's kind of like the basis of what I look at when I'm putting anything together in terms of business systems. But it's less business, as in lean, effective, strategic, and simple. If I can build a business that's less lean, effective, strategic, and simple, like I'm good, I'm golden. And it's it's a quick way to kind of put the emphasis on the stuff that matters, right? And a lot of times we can get bogged down doing stuff that it's not in the 20% of the stuff that's going to give us the 80% of the returns. We can get bogged down, tracking stuff that are going to be navigators instead of KPIs and all of that thing, and all of that stuff. But when you think lean, when you think effective, when you think strategic, when you think simple, like it brings you back to this one space. Like, does it match? Does it matter? Like, does it make sense to have that in place? And just kind of, it dilutes the heaviness. A lot of times I find that it's harder to simplify, something that's been built than it is to actually build the thing. Right. Especially it's been my experience when it comes down to developing processes and training protocols and that sort of thing. Like, okay, what's imperative here? What do they really need to focus in? What's extra? What's make it less.
Yeah. So say that again, because I was writing it down, but I don't think I got what are the 2 S's? Lean, effective, strategic,
and simple. And the simple part is the hardest one, I think.
We made that a core value, and it's interesting in the software company, because that was the thing. Like, all the systems, and we even built. It's been 3 years now, I think. We built a CRM that this kind of like grew out of, because we learned so much from it. We tried to be everything to everybody, and what you lose in that is simplicity. And I see that's the problem with most CRMs that are out there. It's just that they're it's all about features, right? It's all about this big list of features, but then the usability sucks, right? And so the day-to-day in there is kind of miserable, and people don't like using them. So we said, let's not try to be everything. Let's make it to where it's actually like a joy to use, and it's actually very simple to use. And so it's good that my main design guy, he pushes back, because I tend to want things as a user of the system as well. I'm like, oh, we need to do this. And he's like, no. So he pushes back and is like, okay, well, we got to keep it simple. So let's find a happy middle.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been cool because, our customers actually say, like, yeah, we appreciate that you're not trying to throw all this prospecting stuff in here, like that you're not doing all this because like let other people do that and be really good at it. You guys are being really good at what you're doing.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, I think there's fundamentals to every business. There's to every industry. Like you can, throw in all the bells and whistles, but the next thing that's going to happen is that things are going to get bogged down. And it doesn't matter if it's in software, if it's in your operating system, if it's in, just training protocols. I think I have a theory, and it's a theory, right? But I think entrepreneurs tend to be overachievers at heart. So we take that overachievement mentality and want to over deliver. And then think, okay, how can I improve? How can I make this better? How can I, and I think we carry that same thought process into creating the systems. When we're talking to our people, we just want to, swamp them with all kinds of good stuff, quote unquote, right? But I think, people that are not wired that way, they're not, they just don't care for that information. And to them, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's redundant. It's stuff that looks great for us. Because we're, the visionary looking at this whole thing, want it to work, and then want to cover every single, hole in the wall, right?
Yeah.
But for them, it's not convenient, and people are not going to use something if it's not convenient for them to use, even if they have to, even if it's part of a process. That's why you have employees all the time cutting corners. So if you look at the essentials and really just hyper focus on the essential stuff that's got to be done. Maybe throw a bell and a whistle here and there, but not the whole stack. You know what I mean? Into the process, things become a lot more usable. I feel like so. But
yeah, it's like kind of like the 80-20, right? Like, what are we even using? And I had to do that. I had to go back when we built that big system, and it was hulking, and it was just like and it was expensive because it had to do all this stuff. And and at the end of the day, we had to scrap it because I was like, this is just like, there's too much going on here. I don't like, it's like you said, once you build it, to simplify it after it's built. Yeah. Oh my God, that was like daunting. And my team was like, you know what, let's start over. Yeah. And that was really hard because we had a lot of customers that actually liked it, the software, but it's like, you know what, we're going to start from scratch. And, some people might call me crazy for doing that. Like, I kissed over $1 million of development money goodbye. But what I gained from that was learning. And I finally listened to an old CTO I had, a chief technical officer, who was telling me, like, you're making a ton of assumptions about what's necessary. And really, you need to try to get it down to the fewest assumptions that you can make to make it viable. And what it's called in the software, you probably know, is the minimal viable product.
MVP, yeah.
Minimal. And, what is it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be embarrassingly simple. And that was 2 years ago. We put that out, the embarrassingly simple, where we took out and stopped making assumptions. Now, the interesting thing about that was we even went as far for a CRM system to say, what if we don't need tasks? Like, that's a crazy assumption to make, and to cut out the assumption that you need tasks. Yeah. But you know what? The people that used that earlier system never complained about it. Like, but it evolved into something where we ended up having tasks. But it came through that evolution instead of from the assumption so that you'd have this kind of weird, wonky, overdone thing. It became an efficient thing, a simple thing that created tasks with only the necessary stuff that people needed. And that process was beautiful to create things in your business that way. And then how much stress and time and work does that take off of us, right? Like, we're not. Right. But it's like you said, the temptation's always there to, like, no, just add this, just add that.
It's gonna be okay. And then next thing you know, you have 100 things that started off as like little add-ons, right? And it just becomes cumbersome.
And as an entrepreneur, I want to ask you too, like, because I'm sure this resonates with you. Probably, like, it was probably about 3 years ago also, when I had this talk with this guy I met in San Antonio. I live in San Antonio, and he was doing some interesting stuff business-wise, not related to real estate. But I met with him for lunch, and I was talking about the stuff going on and what I was doing. And he was like, dude, you just told me, like, you've got like 9 things going. He's like, literally, you've got like 9 things going. And, as entrepreneurs, he said, like we give birth to these things, like, and then we've got to keep them alive. Like, even if we're not spending time every day on them, they're taking brain space. Like
you're feeding it somehow, some way.
Yeah. You don't want to ever let any of them die. Yeah. And he's like, dude, it's time to let some die to let others grow, because you're maxed. And so the exercise he did with me, and you may have heard of something similar. I've never experienced this, so it was new to me. He said, okay, I'm going to take these 9 things and I'm going to repeat them back to you. And you only get 1 second to say yes or no, whether you're passionate about it or you're not. I don't want you thinking about it, because you're always going to have an excuse to say yes, yes, yes. And because you don't want them to die, right? You don't want to say you put in all that work and you're going to
They're babies. They're babies. They're a bunch of babies.
Who's going to say no to a baby? And then, so he
did that. You got to
clean
the poop. You got to feed them. You got to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. He went through and I did what he said, and there was only one.
Wow. Yeah. Priorities and breaking it down. No, I do have a few. So right now I have 4 businesses, and then an education business. I coach real estate wholesale. And I think that's one of the most gratifying ones, my education business. But when I was tapping into a lot of different verticals. I was playing around. I started in transportation. That was my first business. So after that, I went into a credit repair company. So I put one of those together, and it's just different. Basically, what I was doing, I was chasing the profit. I was looking at business models and profit models, as opposed to places where I wanted to play in. And it may sound cliche, right? When people say, follow your passion, follow what you love doing. Well, the reality is that more than likely at the beginning, your passion, what you enjoy doing, is not going to, pay the bills, at least because it's not in business form. So, I went through a couple of, different places that had, or different companies that had nothing to do with each other and whatnot. And I found out that it was hard to feed them individually, right? So now what I have is I have a collection of companies, but they all feed each other. They all connect. For example, my education business links to my my wholesaling business and fix and flip business. Why? Because it promotes credibility. It's my lab to test marketing strategies, so I can test stuff in there and then take it over to my education business. So that feeds that. I own a brokerage, so if we get leads from real estate investments that they're not a fit, we can always push them over to my agents, right? So that feeds that. So, and then organizational psychology, which is the business development side of things, that gives me an overview of how to connect everything, kind of bring it together. But like now, it's one of the first questions that I'll present to myself: is it okay? Cool. Is it something that I can build into what I have? Or is it going to be a completely standalone, different type of project that's out there? And that's going to take a lot more energy, right?
Yeah.
Than using the resources that I already have that are existing. So, at least for now, that's my strategy. Maybe when I get, in the future, when, more established, I can look at other stuff. But more than likely, it'd be like just already running businesses as opposed to building stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think that's where I was kind of being overwhelmed, because I was still having to run most everything. Like, I still had to be involved in a lot of things. And I think it's really having, sort of like the example of Justin and his right-hand person. She was kind of like, she was running the show, like for the most part, right? Like he was still there to guide and stuff like that, but he was the owner. He was acting like a business owner.
Decentralized.
And so when you've got that going on, like when you set that up and you hire that key person, that CEO, then you've got the opportunity to build something else up. And, so I think, for me back then, like even 3 years ago, that was definitely not what I had, so it's not that you can't do that, right? But it's just that if you do it in the right way, and that's what I'm doing now, right? I'm following the one thing I said I was passionate about, and I'll get that to a good point to where if I decide to take on something else, I'm going to make sure that I've got a hire that's going to take most of my responsibility off of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Completely agree. So, what was your mindset shift, in terms of, okay, I'm a solo operation. Now I'm going to put together a team. I'm curious about that. Like what was happening, in your psyche there when you decided to, okay, take the step to put it all together and commit it to bringing people in, and how did bringing people in improve your operations?
Yeah, so it was out of pain, right? Like it was just out of overwhelm.
Wow.
And just like tired of doing it. So it was like, I'm gonna, like, the pain of still having to do all this is greater than whatever the pain is going to be to hire somebody, train them, and work with them and find those mistakes. And it was really just kind of like the fear of, the unknown of what it was going to be like, because I had never done it before. Right. And at some point, like maybe my mindset even at the time was, I overcame all kinds of fears to get into business in the first place and get this real estate stuff going. And in my mind, I kind of said, like, I've gotten to success here. I don't have to go through all that pain anymore. I don't have to go through all that fears, like the new fears. Like I've done that. I paid my dues. But it's like, hey, that's not how it works. Like if you want to get stale and live a very comfortable, boring life, yeah, do that. But most of us as entrepreneurs, that's not how we're wired. So it's like, it's time to put on my big boy pants and, go back through it again, right? Go back through fumbling around and not knowing what the hell to do. And so making those hires. And then I think over time, like it became a fun thing, because it was like the fears started subsiding and the challenge of it was there. And just like seeing the changes that came about, and then it was like momentum was built. And there was just like no stopping. And after that, it was just get the ball rolling.
One thing that happens too is especially if you have, the style of leadership, right? One thing that happens is that you start empowering your team, and then they start bringing stuff in. They start improving your processes. They start bringing in, ideas and things that are going to improve your operation. So you start to borrow from different perspectives. A couple of weeks ago, I had one of my guys come in, because all the trainings are done by me, right? In my head, I'm wired. That's it's one of the anchoring biases that I have. Like, I got to train my people. Yeah. And then he goes, well, I mean, you do great in the trainings here, and there. But what if, like, every time I've had to teach something, I learn it, even better. So what if each one of us was responsible, for a week to come in and then train on something? I was like, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, best idea ever. Takes off, from my plate, right? Takes, things that I got to handle, and it empowers them. But now, I mean, that doesn't happen if you're not empowering the people in your team. And when that happens, I mean, to me, it's just like fireworks in my head. Like, yes.
This is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah. Life-changing stuff. Yeah. I mean, if they stay on the company for a long, long time, I'm going to have that empowerment, right, along with them. And if they go on and then build their own thing, I help them somehow, some way, right? So that still fulfills me and my journey of empowering entrepreneurship. So yeah, it's just amazing what happens when you collaborate at a team level and build a decentralized business model of ownership. So I love it. Yeah, Danny. So I want to ask you, if somebody wants to get, have a conversation with you, maybe find out more about who you are, and definitely find out more about Forefront CRM and the products that you're developing, where would they find you?
Yeah, so they can. I actually started a new podcast that's geared towards investors still doing everything themselves, and like focusing on exactly what we were talking about today, going into facing the fears and going and building a team. And facing the fears voluntarily, right? That's the key. And, so I named the podcast Braver, because it's not that we lose our fears or we overcome our fears. They're still there. We just become braver voluntarily and attack them instead of cowering or being small and just being afraid, right? So the podcast is called Braver. It's just Braver. And you can find it at braver.fm. If you're trying, and that is a good way to find out more about like what I'm doing and everything. But you can also email me at danny@forefrontcrm.com. And then I also have a framework. So if you're interested in looking at how you can plug the leaking holes in your deal funnel for your real estate business, the different things from when the lead comes in to becoming a deal, like really nailing it down to where you can get 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 7 possibly.
Oh, absolutely. That's epic. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get that for free over at forefrontcrm.com/framework. Just forefrontcrm.com/framework. You can get that for free.
Perfect. I'll make sure that we have all those links in the show notes. So people can definitely take advantage of that stuff. I mean, this is years and years of doing, research, trial and error, and stuff that you're putting, out there for people to come in and then just take advantage and cut the learning curve. So it'd be just crazy. It'd be insane not to take the step forward and at least check that stuff out. So thank you so much, man, for that. I have one of my favorite questions it's before we sign off, I want to ask you, if you were walking down the street and you ran into your 17-year-old self, what would you tell that Danny?
17-year-old self.
What piece of advice would you give?
It would probably be that she doesn't validate you.
Oh, wow.
Because I think at that age, like, it's all about like the girlfriend, right? Like, it's like, I got to be around her all the time, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's
wow,
like
that's so on point.
it's like a big, like, learning to validate yourself and not requiring someone else to kind of support you and bring, like, it's a very difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's like kind of at the forefront, like it's at the front of my mind, because actually I divorced like 1.5 years ago. And so there was a lot of real soul searching and a lot of stuff going on there. So that's where that comes from. But I think that's a big thing for us, right? Because it's business, we do a lot of things, and life even, to avoid situations that we're just habitually repeating over and over again.
Right.
And it's getting to the bottom of that stuff and facing it, becoming braver, right? But anyway, yeah, that's what I would say.
Wow, that's huge, and you're completely right. I think the sense of validate. I mean, at 17, I like to pick that age range, because I feel like we have somewhat of an idea what the world looks like. We have absolutely no idea on how it works. And it's one of those, soul searching moments. I think at least it was for me, right? I keep going back to, 17, 18, 19, and I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I knew what I felt like I knew what I wanted, which turned out to be completely different. But it's a space of vulnerability, and you are looking for validation, right? And I think a lot of those emotions get carried on. For even from that age, right? We grow up, and if you don't take the intentional effort to work on yourself, work on your inner being, I think those emotions can get trapped in there, and then just carry them onto your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you still don't know what the fuck you're doing at the age of 60. So.
Yeah, that's what they say. Like in really, self-improvement and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of talk about 80-year-old children.
Yeah.
When you see an 80-year-old person acting like a teenager, like a brat.
Yeah.
Still people that never, and personally, I don't want to be that. Like I'm doing, and I did personal development. I did a lot to come out of like a lot of the stuff that I had going on as a teenager and through youth, to get into real estate, to get over, feeling inferior or intimidated by lawyers and realtor, stuff like that. Yeah. And seeing that they're just people, and I'm a person, and we're all humans, and we all have a right to be here and do whatever we're doing.
Right. And
overcoming that. But I think, again, like it's like that initial success, and then it feels like you've made it, and then you don't have to keep going. But then something happens where you realize, man, like I'm just on another layer of the spiral. I still got more to go. And life will always be like that.
Did you ever see Shrek, the movie Shrek?
Yeah.
You remember when he talks about just peeling the layers of the onion?
Oh yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I think we're all just a bunch of onions. That's my thesis. But yeah, it's a learning process, man. Life it's a beautiful gift that we get. Danny, thank you so much, man. I think you dropped a lot of gems here. I'm very, very pleased and honored to have had you in the show. I appreciate your time.